Interest rates, they are going up, and that is a fact, and it will affect all of us in some way. A quarter point here, a half point there, it's all over the news. Now, what's not clear, though, is whether I should be happy or sad. The truth is, the financial interconnections between interest rates and bonds and inflation and the overall economy are widely misunderstood. In fact, I don't know more than a handful of people who truly understand, and I'm not one of them either. What I can share with you, though, is the single most important thing about interest rates that I have ever learned. So, welcome to the Twisted Lens, episode 11, the one thing you need to understand about all of this stuff. Now, if you have a really clear understanding of economics, this piece may be too simplistic and you want to give it a miss. For the rest of us, let's try and better understand what low interest rates, unfunded liabilities, foreign held debt, and currency exchange have to do with my mortgage payment or my car loan. We may need to twist the lens and look at rates from a micro to macro perspective. An economist once explained to me that a country needs a minimum interest rate of about 5% to attract investment and to have healthy public and private sector pension funds. Go on, I said cautiously. Whether it's the American Social Security Program, the Canada Pension Fund, or let's say the Chicago Firemen's Pension Fund, we pay monthly into these pooled funds, which are invested by professionals into ultra-safe programs on our behalf. Good. On one hand, ultra-safe is a really good thing because not losing our money is critical. But not having the money grow is also a huge problem, known as an unfunded liability. Now stay with me. Unfunded liability is just a fancy way of saying the fund gives out more money than it brings in, say via interest earned and new contributions. The net effect is failure of the fund. Now suddenly the teachers, the firefighters, and all the old people, they get nothing. Zero, no check in the mail. This is a disaster. This happens when the interest rates on safe investments fall below the level of inflation, which is exactly where we are now, because many funds are also indexed to increased payouts tied to the cost of living. More money out, less money in. Now, in normal times, inflation runs at about 2%, or you could say things get about 2% more expensive every year. Okay, so to just break even then, our pooled investments must earn at least 2%, and as of just 1 year ago, a safe US T-bill was only paying 0.8%, and savings accounts were at 0.06. This problem is becoming a lot more clear. At current rates, my so-called savings are being eroded and my retirement plan will fail. So why would I ever cheer when interest rates go down? Now, twisting my own lens, if I'm trying to buy something expensive, like a house or a fancy car, I will likely need to borrow money. Okay, the more it costs to borrow, the rate of interest, the less I can afford. So in that case, higher rates are a really bad thing for me. And there's another thing. Canada and America are both sellers of debt and buyers of debt. So let's say Bolivia borrows $1 billion at 2% interest and can barely make the payments. Now, if rates go back up to 5% to protect our local pension funds, Bolivia could default on the loan and all the gains of the higher rates could be lost. Oh boy. Conversely, Canadian debt is owned by many countries around the world at very low rates. Now, if rates go up, we will struggle to make payments on our own debt. No wonder this stuff is so hard to understand. In school, they told us that during times of a poor economy, the central bank will lower interest rates to stimulate borrowing and buying to kind of get things moving again, much like they just did during COVID. What they didn't tell us is that those low rates cause prices to increase, inflation, and pension funds to fail, and the money you and I have saved all our lives to be greatly devalued. So when the U.S. Federal Open Market Committee, that's a mouthful, considers a change in rates, they have to consider what's happening all over the world and what impact their decisions will have in dozens and dozens of scenarios. Essentially, the correct decision has become impossible. If I was the head of the central bank for just one day, which poison would I choose to drink? High rates or low rates? So in simplistic terms, here is what I learned. Anyone on a pension or relying on saved money to survive desperately wants higher rates. Younger people who need to borrow money to build equity and create wealth over time, or borrowers of national debt, well, they want the lowest interest rates possible. The future be damned. So when interest rates went up sharply this last week, I was asked what I thought. Well, these days I tend to be a little more thoughtful on the subject, and I said, well, that really just depends, which wasn't much help. As I watched my mortgage payments increase and my savings account increase, good and bad, enough to give me a headache.